Today on Blue Collar Performance, I'm going to show you how to build this for less than $1,500. These are some manifolds I picked up at swap meet probably a year and a half ago, and I've been just sitting on, but I was kind of looking at them, and I went ahead and I ordered some T4 flanges. I was kind of looking at them and I was thinking, you know, if I cut these off right here, that would probably be a really good mount for these. And obviously I'll have to mount them on an engine, which I have plenty of those sitting around to kind of mock it up and get the turbo set on there so they're more or less symmetrical the way they're clocked. But I'm going to take these heat shields off and cut one of these things up and see if I'm crazy or if this is going to work. Got the first one cut, kind of cleaned up the edges a little bit. Flange fits pretty decent there. So we're gonna bolt it to this guy, which is a T76, just eBay Chinesium stuff when I haven't got a pair of these. I've always been kind of curious if a 5.3 will spool those. And so now I've got a couple of them, and I am going to mount this flange on it, or bolt this flange to it, kind of more or less set my angle over here on this engine and tack weld it and figure out what we've got to do from there. Got that guy tacked on there. Truthfully, I'm pretty happy with how it sits. On the other side, I'm gonna have to change the angle because the housing will come up on the other side. So I'm gonna try to change the angle, and I'm gonna try to reference where this thing all sits, like find something I can kind of eyeball it and line it up with, or maybe even measure off of something, you know, on top of the engine. Probably that engine, but kind of get it set very similar to that one, and I don't see a problem with that. And the reason I wanted to use these manifolds over the stock truck manifolds is because if you flip them, obviously it's going to put the hot side all the way up here at the front of the engine. Well, that weighs some pounds, you know, I don't know how many, but it weighs something. And I would prefer to keep my weight behind the center line of the front axle. So that's what the plan is behind this. Also, I kind of like the way it's, you know, how it does twin 2-into-1s, and also it just makes the fabrication end of it pretty simple. So anyway, I'm gonna pull this apart and finish weld this out, and then I'm going to, well, actually I'm gonna pull this apart and then I'm gonna monkey with the other side and see if I can cut it where it fits correctly, and then I'll finish weld everything. I don't want to shoot myself in the foot, you know, get too far ahead of myself, as I am prone to do at times. Got the other one tacked up. They're not perfect, but you know, when you're dealing with the scrolls the way they turn, it's really hard to get them perfect. But I wanted to pull those off, just those big nasty wheels right there on top of that motor, you know, and that's I think that'll do. And so I'm gonna have to go in here and put steel in here and fill all this. The other side's pretty tight. I'll just have to block off the rear here, but that's okay because that kind of makes a common plenum. And you can see, obviously, I started that way too low to begin with, but I got that sorted. But I'll grind that off, and then I will, you know, I'll get some steel and I'll fill all this in the way it needs to be. So I'm gonna tear it all back down and go back to the bench. Okay, got those units welded up. Just came in here with some flat steel and capped what I needed to cap and piled a lot of extra weld on in several places. This one's a little more straightforward. I did have to, and that's nothing to worry about. I'm gonna get in here with a die grinder and clean these welds. But just cap that with some steel. And so like I say, I'm gonna clean these up a little bit with the die grinder, make them look a little better, make them a little bit smoother. Not perfect by any stretch of the imagination, but they don't have to be, because frankly, these are some variety of swap meet manifold with some eBay turbo flanges welded to them. So I'm gonna stick the turbos on it and we'll look at it. Went ahead and clocked them about where I figured they'll live. I think I can do my plumbing from there. Speaking of which, I just love that. That looks spectacular. Of course, when it's not on a junkyard motor with all the crap hanging everywhere, it'll look a lot better. But anyway, so I guess on to the cold side. Got a couple more parts set in place. Intake carburetor. Guess it's going to be blow through. And then these just recently came available from Evil Energy, or at least I recently became aware of them. I've already got one installed. Don't know if you're familiar with those, but those are awesome. So now we can go ahead and pull the compressor housing off that side and go ahead and get it welded on. Got the second one welded on. Looks quite a bit better than the first one, but I don't profess to be a professional welder. I probably should have practiced a little bit and warmed up before I did the first one, but you know what, you're gonna have some of that. So I'm gonna stick this on there. We'll take a look at that. Got those guys welded on. Really cool little couplers. I've never had any of those before, but carb head should be in within a couple of days, and spacer, I like to run a spacer with them, give the air a chance to straighten out before it goes through the carburetor. Once I get that, I can get all the piping built and actually make it look like a turbo system. Drinking a little cold beer last night. Went ahead and got this guy welded on. A merge made. Got my two tubes welded on. Didn't video any of that. I try to make it a policy not to be on video and drink beer, be on video impaired, whatever. But anyway, so now I have to connect the dots from here to here. And as you can see, it's gonna have to come out and back in a little bit. So I just spent the last whole lot of my life making a bunch of pie cuts. So I guess I'm gonna start stacking and tacking them little units and start piecing my way to victory on this. Well, it was my intention to build one side of this and then video building the other side of this. As you can see, that is not what took place. However, we are plumbed up, so blow-off valve, I'm gonna put it right here, which I think is given the angle of everything, I think is a very cool place for it. And then on the wastegates, which are also ordered, I'm gonna plumb in right here and just come up alongside this so that I can tie into my downpipes. So, waiting on those to come in. When they come in, I will actually try to video some of that, because I sort of skipped ahead here. I'll try not to do that again. But also been restoring my wife's grandma's old desk for her, and part of that is a huge amount of sanding dust all over everything, but it is what it is. So anyway, blow-off valve wastegates come in. I'll try to get those on video. So I will see you guys then, which will be now. Got me a hole punched in my merge there. Did a little whittling on this to make it fit the way I think I want it to. So that should drop in there just like so. And then that will allow my blow-off valve to be right out here on the front of everything. So weld this in, and then I'm gonna go in here with my burr bit and dress the edges and everything so that it's nice. So I'll get to welding. Well, I said I wasn't gonna do it, and then I did it. Went ahead and put the blow-off valve on. Wasn't too big of a deal. I just slid that piece in there and welded it. I've still got to go in there and clean up the edges a little bit. No big deal. But now we're on to wastegates. So I'm going to tie them in right here where these runners come together. And I took an end mill, cut me a hole in there so that my drill bit will clear and not be trying to run on that angle and won't kill my pilot bit for my hole saw. So I'm going to set you guys up on time lapse, and I'm going to hog this thing out. Well, that was a bit of a shit show. My taper kept coming loose here, so I finally got it though, I think. That'll probably just break out of there. So let me take this out of the mill and we'll check it out. Okay, got that all done. One thing I didn't count on was I cut through the backside here. I did know I was drilling through that when I was getting deep, and that's not a problem. I can just weld that right up. So let's smack this thing and see if it'll break, like I hope it will. Okay, well, I'll tell you what the problem is. We got a big, see if I can get that on camera. Right down in here, you can see the cuts. I don't know if you can see that, but there's a cut on either side of this. And then there's that guy. So I'm gonna have to reach in here with something and thin that down a little bit so we can go ahead and get this thing out of here. So let me do that real quick. Well, that didn't work worth a flip, so we're back in the mill. Got an end mill in it. I'm just gonna machine this out. So kind of riding the struggle bus today. So let me get this hammered out and I'll bring you back. Well, that worked. I went in here with my die grinder and kind of cleaned things up a little bit while it was all open. But I've got a problem. My wastegate pipe is 2 1/4, and me being the circuit genius I am, I didn't bother looking to see if my tubing or hole saw was 2 or 2 1/4. Turns out it's 2. So I'm gonna study on this to figure out what I need to do. After careful consideration, I decided to just 3D print the gap with my welder. So it's still pretty toasty, but welded it, had to kind of go up in there, go around to seal everything. Then went in here, and boy, that looks bad on camera. It doesn't look that bad in person. Anyway, I'm gonna clean that up a little bit, and that manifold will be ready to go on. Got that guy on there. Pretty happy with the way it sits. On what's left, do the other side. Getting late tonight though, so I'll go ahead and bang that out tomorrow. But that's gonna have a pretty cool look to it. Right, that'll work. Weld this on here and cut the hole obviously and weld this on, and then I'll have to level this up and get my height set to kind of match the other side. But I think we're gonna be very close to what we've got on the other side, and it's gonna be very close. Mission accomplished. Got that second wastegate on. They're not perfectly symmetrical due to the angles of the scroll on the turbo, but whatever, you know, at the end of the day, pretty happy with that. And here's a breakdown on it. The turbos on eBay, $139.09. You know, I just did like times 2 and over here. So we've got turbos, blowoff valve, wastegate, flanges, exhaust manifolds, the air cleaner spacer, the carb hat, the intake manifold, the carburetor, the silicone coupler, and the turbo coupler. So that's everything I used. Now, as far as the carb hat goes, I kind of splurged on that. It was $298, but that was what I wanted. You can get one for $89.11 that will work just fine, and I've used in the past. Total of it, the way it is $1,288.69. Total of it with a cheaper carb hat, $1,079.80. So this can be done cheap. Now I included the intake manifold and the carburetor in this. So the intake was $178. I bought it on Amazon Days, whatever it was. And then the carb I got for $150 a swap meet. There'll have to be some stuff done in there to make it work, but not too big of a deal. But if you ran a stock intake manifold with some decapped injectors and had them flowed, you know, you could save a significant amount over that. So you could make this work. Actually, this motor came out of the junkyard, $350 motor out of the junkyard. So, and that was with everything, computer, harness, intake, complete engine. So I could take this, spend $100 on credits, decap 2 sets of injectors and send them off and have them flow matched and use those, and then get a cheap 3-bar map sensor, which I've used. The ones off Amazon seem to work just fine. And you could actually have a complete twin turbo LS like this, complete engine and everything, for under $1,500. Probably with quite a bit of room left, but I'm just pretty pleased with it, and that's a pretty big transformation. Pretty happy with that. I just use this motor as a mock-up. I've got this aluminum block L33 over here that I've had the crank machined, and I've got parts for it and stuff. So that's what all this is going on. Weather's kind of crap, it's winter. So I just piddled in the garage a little bit. So anyway, but there you guys go, you know, bargain basement, twin turbo, LS setup, and may not be perfectly symmetrical, and I've used some old crappy cast manifolds to make it work, but at the end of the day, it'll function just fine. And I know I can already read your minds in the comments. People are going to be telling me, well, those wastegates don't have priority. That's not going to work. They don't have priority. There's a 2-inch hole in the side of that manifold at the plenum, and those are 60mm gates. Done that lots of times too, and that works perfectly. Should work just fine. Of course, this thing, you know, the way I'm going to build it, it's going to see a lot of boost. But anyway, I hope you guys enjoyed this video. Maybe even got something from it. I thank you for watching, and I hope you'll join me next time.